right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SBL Week 5, the final week of our first round robin. I am AJS0, joined here tonight by Sundari Scotchanauts. Scotch, my
How's
man,
it
how's
going?
it going?
It's going. Better than these two
And
teams, I can tell you that.
I can tell it's going good for you because we're going to start this on a real nice note with our Week 4 MVPs. And Game 1, the SS Boosted Friendship versus Two Kawhi to Live, Two Sugoi to Die. The MVP goes to a guy who went 2-2-6 playing Dr. Mundo. You.
Oh gosh, I'm blushing. Please,
Well,
but that
good. You
game
should
was
be
just
because that was a pretty dirty game you played. I didn't early on, like, it didn't really seem like you were having that much impact, but it was just really a stereotypical Scotch game where you just were in all of the fights and you somehow were always at like the edge of how aggressively you could play, and it was just really a great tank game in a league full of people who aren't good at playing tank games.
Yeah, I think they're just allergic, you know.
And I do believe that was a unanimous MVP as well, so that was a pretty beast game. Then moving on to Game 2, Betty Bargainbin versus Boy Butter. There was a split MVP, Renai's Circulation, aka Blabur, with his 507 Lux, and Failed Destiny with his 0213 Bard. And in a league full of Bard being a meme for being a shitty champion, it was really cool to see actually a really high impact Bard game because I know we haven't seen it on stream, but we've seen a lot of Bard players in this league outside of SBL games. And most of the time, it's just garbage, man. They don't do anything. The whole game, they lose their lane. They don't make plays. And Phil Destiny comes and he's like, hey, I'm a real Bard player. And it was just, jumping through walls, stunning dudes, turning towers off, man. It was pretty good. What'd you think of that game?
Yeah, I actually failed Destiny. I kind of wrapped up as a one-trick pony last season, and coming into this season, now you have two things you really got to respect out of him. He's really polished this Bard up and is a legitimate threat in bot lane. And it's good to see people not necessarily going, I need to pick Alistair and Nautilus because they're strong right now. I can pick Bard because I really like the kit. I think I play well with it, and I can excel and make plays with it. So it's nice to see people adopting champions at this level to their strengths instead of trying to force themselves onto meta champions.
All right, and then Game 3 was Waifu Superstar versus Think Twice, Die Once, and assuming I'm reading this right, that MVP went to a little over-nectin player named me.
Yeah, it must have been nice picking or playing your Renekton into something you play a lot, so it's like you've already done the homework and they, give you the easiest test in the world to ace.
Yeah, it felt good. There was a bit of pressure going into that Renekton pick. It's obviously been talked up for a long time, and I've been playing well on other champions, so it was like, well, what if I step into this big bad Renekton and I don't just wreck the game? And fortunately, I didn't have to worry about that because I made purple my little cuckold bitch and take home my first MVP of the season. And those of you that know me know I will remember each and every one of these that I win.
Forever.
All right, so moving forward to today's games, then we're about to start off with SS Boosted. No, I'm sorry, we're not. I'm reading off the MVP list. We're about to start off with Boy Butter versus the SS Boosted Friendship in what is, if we're going to be technical, the last place game. But I feel like there's quite a bit on this game actually. So the SS Boosted Friendship sitting at 1-3, but they have had to play sub players in 3 of their 5 games so far. And Boy Butter obviously has been flipping their roster around each week. They don't seem to really know entirely sure what they're doing.
Yeah,
But they are currently
definitely
0-4. This feels like a must-win game definitely for Boy Butter. I mean, they won't be mathematically eliminated yet, but they are. This is not a team that's given up on their season yet. This is a team that still wants to figure out what they can change, and I expect we're going to see something pretty different out of these guys this week. to see if this can be their tipping point.
Oh yeah.
And then, meanwhile, Boosted Friendship have to feel like they're a lot better than their record, and they've had to play Cheeseburglar too many times.
I heard a rumor whispered in the diamonds, and I actually encountered it last night. Uh, Splinter fell out of diamond, and I saw the saddest, most dejected Sejuani jungle out of Splinter I have ever seen in my life. That was the saddest thing, sitting there just setting up his team for perfect fights, and no one doing the damage, and him just sitting there going, I can't win playing solo key hero champs, and this Sejuani isn't doing anything either. I don't know what to do with my life.
Yeah, I
Everything's
am
been a
really
lie.
curious to see where Master Splinter goes because it's not like he's been bad this season or anything, but he clearly has not been playing at the level that we're used to seeing out of him.
Right, well, the
So,
problem is when you get drafted for 1150, you have to do everything on your team. Especially when, like, you can look at this and say Splinter got some good value picks, but these are all people that have been in the league for a while. So you're not getting any, like, gamble rookies that could come in and just be amazing for you. Like, these are all knowns. And people, that makes it harder, especially when you're having to do the bargain bin for players, and people pretty much know what these people are capable of, unless all of a sudden they just have an epiphany and start playing something different.
all right, so on to this draft then. So we've got the first few bands have been tossed out, or all of the bands have been tossed out. Boy Butter taking away Callista LeBlanc and Fiora from Boosted Friendship, and Boosted Friendship taking away Hecarim, Shen, and Sivir. Some very interesting bands going there.
The Thresh is up. We could see it this game.
Yeah. So to me, the biggest thing I think about these bans is the Callista ban against Evelites. I am curious about that. Callista was nerfed on 6.6, and it was apparently pretty substantial. It was a base attack speed nerf, which is typically the hardest hitting nerf you can drop on an AD carry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just feel like that's one of those 80 carry champions like Old Vayne used to be, where it would just take over a game.
User joined your
It
channel.
was the most anti-fun thing you could play against.
All right, and a first pick coming out of Albino Joe going to be the Bard. It only took 5 weeks of him begging, but he finally got Master Splinter to let him pick this Bard. And Albino Joe, if Crepo wasn't the real person, Albino Joe would be the man leading the Bard hype train. But that is going to give Resquect his Thresh, and Dubdrum going to pick up Rek'Sai with the first rotation for Boosted. And Resquect on Thresh, this is a pick I'm excited to see. This was something that was talked up a lot before the season. And we've got to be honest here when we say, Resquect has not had that strong of a season. Definitely not been the player we expected him to be, I think. Not that, once again, not that he's been a bad player, but there were people saying this guy was going to step in and immediately be the best support player in the league, and that's definitely not been the case.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, although it is kind of hard to when you're banned off your best champion and you're having to play something like a Braum, it is kind of hard to light the world on fire with that kind of pick.
And this is also a guy who has been playing with some internet issues all season long, from what I've understood. And I believe he recently moved. He might be in a situation where that is no longer an issue. So I'm really excited to see if that's the case, and we maybe get to see Resquect Unleashed tonight. Because, I mean, he really is supposed to be the star player for the SS Boosted Friendship.
Actually, I think I heard today that it's one more week, and then he'll have internet at his new place.
Okay. Well, hopefully the Starbucks he's playing at right now is pretty good to him. So next set of picks here, we got Albino Joe locking in Caitlyn for Kaking, and Master Splinter taking his Sejuani. So no more of that Devourer, make your teammates hold out the game bullshit. This is going to be a gank early, gank often, force fights a dragon, dive under towers. And I actually really like the makings of this comp so far out of Boy Butter. This plays to their strengths. Obviously, King, not that great at many champions. Give him the Caitlyn. But also, Caitlin's going to work really well with these tower dives
Oh yeah.
that Bard and Sejuani both really like to do. Also, as an aside, real fast, Aurelion Sol is not enabled in the SBL until week 7, if anyone was unclear on that rule. So that will not be an Aurelion Sol. Anyways, just rumbling through the rest of these picks real fast. Evelite and Thor picking up for themselves Lucian and Azir. And I am not surprised to see this Azir out of Thor Odinson. He had a lot of regret about picking the mid lane Nautilus last week after how big he got early. He felt like he just really couldn't do anything to impact that game as it went on. And he wants to play something that, does damage in team fights and can carry the game. And Thor's been having a overall, I'd say, good season. So not surprised to see him opt for more of a mid lane carry here.
Yeah, how do you feel about this Lucian here? Because looking at the other team, you got a Sejuani and Malzahar and a Scion. I really feel like you want a carry with as long of attack speed as you want, not something like a Lucian. 'Cause-
Well, it's going to be looking at boosted comp. I guess now that we have the rest of these picks in, we can start going over these comps as a whole. So Cruise Master on Malzahar and just Dan on Scion, and then on the win picking Poppy to round things out here. So the Lucian pick in this situation, it's gonna be more about the mobility he has, and Evelite's gonna need to play a bit more aggressively than. That's a general thing with Lucian, but you need to be able to play fairly aggressively to utilize Lucian well. And he's actually probably going to need the Lucian mobility against, a Sejuani and a Scion especially.
Right, I'm just worried about him being able to reliably attack anything in that front line. Like, do you really want to be hitting Malzahar? Do you really want to be hitting Scion? Can you reliably and safely hit a Sejuani? I just don't know about that pick. I mean, but it looks like you got Thresh, you got Azir, and you got Poppy. That's a ton of peel. So they could just brute force some of these fights and put up a wall for Evilite to shoot behind.
Yeah, it's going to be very important to see what Evilite can do in the early team fights, maybe in the 15 to 25-minute range. If he's not big after about the 25th minutes, he's probably never going to really have an impact in this game. But that's fine because his team does have a late game carry threat and Thor Odinson's Azir in the mid lane, who is obviously one of the best DPS mages in the entire game.
We do have a question from chat. Does the Zero Wall stop the Scion ult? I want to assume yes, but
Yes, it would.
okay. What about the interesting interaction I feel would be Poppy and Scion more than that? Whether the Poppy ult
If
could stop the
Poppy,
Scion.
yes, it as far as I understand, it would, but it would be very difficult to hit that Poppy
Time
ult.
that,
So
yeah.
I am assuming we're not going to see that one much. To me, the really interesting pick, it has to be Cruise Master's Malzahar. This is just another pick that screams to me, hi, my name is Cruise Master. I don't play mid lane. I'm not confident in the mid lane. My team is not confident in the mid lane. And we're going to just do whatever we can to see if it works.
Right, but the thing I feel like that was lacking in the previous games were they didn't really have legitimate threat outside of Dan and Splinter. Um, and Cruz, although a mid laner he is not, I feel like he's a fairly decent Malzahar. At least he grasps the concept of your job is to kill this one person in a fight, and that's your contribution. So if you just give Cruz that one mission in life, he can catch out Evilite or Thor, and he'll have done his job.
Yeah, I'm
Plus, you're
very
also
curious to
looking at it.
see what Cruz does in these team fights, actually.
Yeah.
Because there are a
Also,
lot of different ways you can play the Malzahar.
yeah, Malzahar is also very easy to farm with, so it might just be one of those things too, where it's like just an easy economic game for just make it a little bit easier, so you don't have to fight this Azir.
So, fun fact, Malzahar is currently the highest win rate mid laner on champion.gg, in case anyone was wondering. So, This is something the crews I know used to play a little bit of way back in the day, but back in the day was a long time ago.
The other thing is, how do you feel about this Psy on top? Because Dan, haven't we traditionally seen him on uh, duelists and damage dealers and split pushers for the
Yes,
majority of the season?
this is definitely a bit of a departure from what Dan normally plays, and this is actually a matchup I wanted to talk about before the game, and I haven't really gotten to yet. But as far as players go, I'm really excited to see this Dan versus On the Wind matchup because I think these guys have both been playing super well so far this season, and I'm really curious to see what happens when they go head to head. But I am not crazy about the Scion pick out of Dan. He's just not somebody who, to me, seems like a great tank player. And On the Wind, on the other hand, I think is a very good tank player. So, bit of
Well,
pressure
that
on
was
Dan this
something.
game to see if he can hold up.
That was something I was going to hint at, was that Wind has been opposed to playing tanks up to this point. This season, he just doesn't feel like he's able to have the same impact. Although Poppy, although a tank, you could say she is, she does do respectable damage, and she's a fairly good duelist, all things considered.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, that is one thing a lot of people don't realize about Poppy. She's quite a lane bully. There's a lot of opportunities, whether you want to play waves or you want to play fights in the lane, that you can play out a Poppy lane. And On the Wind's traditionally always been a Poppy player, even before her rework.
right.
And I know he's been fairly positive on the new Poppy the whole time. So should be some interesting stuff in this top lane. And of course, as we get in the game, we have our SBL pause of the game, brought to you by Subway. Half the league worked there. And it looks like we are having some cruise internet issues, so we are going to get those resolved really fast. And yep, it looks like resolved almost immediately, so going in here.
With the Caitlyn Bard matchup versus the Thresh Lucian, who do you think comes out on top in lane per se? In that 2v2.
I feel like that lane is entirely on Kaking's shoulders, which is the case in a lot of Caitlyn lanes, but especially with the Bard. Bard not going to put out a whole ton of pressure on his own, whereas Thresh Lucian is an incredibly high pressure 2v2 lane. You know, one big hook or even one big
Oh
flay
yeah.
can easily turn into multiple summoners burns. So I think if the Caitlyn is able to just kind of win really hard and
Right.
outplay on our own, it could be a better lane for King and Albino Joe, but I think in most situations it's going to be a better lane for the Thresh Evolite, especially considering that we haven't really seen King play that well this season. He's been definitely a weak link on this team. And I think this is going to have to be a game where he changes that perception if, you know, he wants to start all season.
I think honestly the biggest problem on the Boy Butter team is I feel like none of them trust each other. Everybody seems to have baggage with everybody else, and they just can't say, like, if we stall this out and get you to 6 item, can you carry? Like, or something like that. Like, can I trust you to win your lane matchup? Like, people just don't seem to have that kind of trust on this team. Everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder at everyone else.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. I'm not going to go too deep into it because there's a very blurred line between the things I've heard and the things I think. And I don't want to get quoted on anything. And apparently we are reconnecting to the spectator client real fast, so you may not see things. I'll try to commentate whatever exciting happens. Spoilers: both bot lanes are leashing for their junglers. Both starting on the bot side of the map. You know, normal stuff here. And a big duel gonna break out in this top lane river as the top lane is walking to lane. I'm just Dan's gonna take a bit of damage. And this will actually let me go into the top lane starting items because I wanted to mention. I'm just Dan opting for cloth armor and 4 pots, On the Wind taking the standard corrupting potion.
I actually really like that out of Dan. Poppy can really bully the Scion early, and that Cloth 5 keeps him in lane much longer than, say, answering that Corrupting Potion. On the other hand, I really like the Corrupting Potion on the Poppy, because it really helps solidify that early lane dominance.
I'm really curious to see how not having the mana regen affects I'm Just Dan, but it doesn't seem to matter
Ooh,
because he gets to level 2 first, and he really forces a lot on the wins.
I didn't see how that start. Did Win just sit in a massive Scion queue and just take the whole combo?
Yeah, that has to be my guess. He just wasn't counting creeps properly, and he didn't realize that I'm Just Dan was about to hit level 2, but good start from Dan.
Yeah, that kudos to him. That was really good.
But yeah, going back to what I was saying, and we can kind of see this developing here. Without the mana regen the Corrupting Potion gives, Dan's going to have to be a little concerned about the fact that Scion can go very quickly. Especially if he's shoving the lane, which Scions traditionally want to be doing a lot of. And Onwit
Oh
actually going to have to
no.
watch out here. Onwit has to flash right as I'm Just Dan is about to rev up an auto attack. Versus a ranged champion, I think he would have just died there.
Yeah, I don't know why.
All right, we are going to try to get this figured out real fast. Because we are having spectator issues, which I don't even know if you guys can hear Tree or not. Yeah, I don't. No, purple's not in this game. All right, all right. Well, we don't know why we can't spectate this game, but we cannot spectate this game. So we are going to get this paused. I guess in the meantime, we are going to get. We're gonna actually just pull the MVPs back up on stream, and we're gonna take a quick break here while we get this resolved. The stream will start going when we're good to go, guys. We'll hopefully be back within a few minutes. Are we muted? All right, guys. We are going to have